Hi, Anna Gray. Hello. What do we say? How do we start this? We do want to mention...
judged by that Chinese girl in there.
I know. Both of them. There's two.
There's clones of them.
Are you all sisters? That's what everybody asks me. Are you sisters?
Are you sisters?
I know.
Are y'all twins?
No. Hey, I do want to say, okay, we're starting to go.
I've got granola in my teeth.
I do want to give a shout out to the Peruvian connection for you did my great photo shoots. Shoot today, and you really made me feel
like a hot, sexy beast.
I did. I felt like just to really actually, there still was that edge of uncomfortableness that I think everybody has with the awareness of being in front of the camera. But you really did it in a wonderful way. But what I really loved about it was the outcome of it is like you captured the heart of me, and I really appreciate that.
Oh,
but then
I loved it.
I was wearing Peruvian connection clothes because I love them so much, in this cardigan and the dress is both from them. And I last minute said tag them, and then they reposted
us and sent us affirmation, which we've needed.
We need some affirmation.
It can feel very naked though, being in front of a camera.
It can.
But not when you have on Peruvian connection.
No, I mean you just obviously rock it. But no, that's what's going on.
Yeah, and to feel
but
good
we want to be naked in our vocabulary,
naked and unashamed,
with our question that we have for today.
Yeah,
how do you want to go about it?
I don't know actually what our question is.
Well, what is our question? Okay, why can't
people be more honest and stop being soft snowflakes with each other? Why can't we have a civil conversation and not beat around the bush, and it doesn't have to be a falling out? Yeah,
why does it have to be so charged?
And why do you have to tiptoe around things and almost like fake empathy, or sometimes even fake friendship?
Yes.
Relationships.
But also at the same time, we're not talking about in our face confrontation. Yeah. We're talking about why can't we just have why can't we just sit across? I remember having this with somebody very near and dear to my heart, and holding their hand and saying, why can't we just have conversation and hold hands and say, I'm struggling with this right now, and you say something, and nobody is shut down. Nobody. You just tell what your heart is about, and what's going on. And nobody shut down. Nobody goes and pout. Nobody goes and sulk. Nobody goes in ramping up. Nobody, screams or yells or... Why can't we do that?
I think we live in a really touchy-feely culture that I think we need to be sensitive to things, but also people are so self-absorbed in their own feelings. And they, I think also there's... I don't know. I think people are really defensive too.
Yes, that's
it. And I mean, it's...
What? What are you talking about?
How dare you?
Look, we hit the bars.
Or even if it's something that is clearly a sore spot in something, or it's I think there is a defensive nature, and I think that there is... At least in our, this culture in which we live in, it is hard for people to, I think, just simply discuss stuff. It always it's always so emotionally ramped up.
Yeah.
Whereas, okay, for example, I used to be very close to, I have a friend in Europe, and talking to him, at first it annoyed me a lot. I thought, he's so blunt. I can't stand it. But then I started thinking, the more I talked to him, I actually really appreciate it, because I wasn't ever shredded as a person. He would shred my arguments to pieces, but never once.
I remember that.
And I was actually encouraged to be blunt and honest. And it was interesting because, so he lived in Europe, right? And obviously I live in America, where he referred to it as Americanized sugarcoating. Yeah. I guess like the Paula Abdul's on American Idol kind of version.
I don't know what you mean by that, because I didn't watch it.
It's okay. She would basically she basically only found the good in everyone, and never, she wasn't a Simon Cowell. He's brutally honest.
Yeah, but there's there's got to be a midway point where, because neither one I mean,
how brutal is too brutal, how soft is too soft.
Well, and not only that, I mean, he was right, I guess. I mean, from what I have, but then she was also right in the sense that she was. Well, I don't know. I guess what you're saying is with your friend in Europe, he was brutal, but there is a point where it's too brutal. You know,
he really wasn't brutal. It was, well, sometimes, but it was an odd cultural shift because where he lived in Europe, they're used to just actually even debating on the norm, and it's totally cool. Yeah. He said like beer and fried food and then debate on a Friday night is pretty typical. Because he said his findings with Americans is we sugarcoat everything and we beat around the bush. Because
and then we beat people up like we're snowflakes and
no, seriously, and that was what he alluded to. He didn't call me a snowflake at one point, but he said, "There you go with your Americanized sugarcoating." Because I was trying to make a point to him, and he said, "You can just say it," which I'm not used to. I'm really not. Yeah, it's very rare that I think people can have a conversation and it's just like completely candid without being too brutal and shredding the person to pieces, or too soft where you're enabling behaviors.
Okay, so let's break this down.
Am I straying too far away?
No, because I'm sitting there thinking there's got to be a balance, and it's not the sugarcoating bit, but the deal is, you know, I spoke to a friend of mine that is on the police force, and she says, you know, it's just crazy out here in the summer because everything goes from 0 to 60 in a heartbeat, you know, and so you don't want that in a conversation. So how do you be honest and loving? Well, I mean, a lot of times that's the big word, key word is you're not doing it in love. You're doing it in a different way to be right, maybe, or to prove a point, or because you really do have some sort of resentment towards that person. But how do we speak to people? You know, I mean, we tend to be, you know, we're on morality. We want to talk about taboo topics, and we have talked about a lot of things, but are we, you know, too fulfilling oriented? You know, are we too emotionally oriented? You know, is it a male female thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think it depends on both people in the conversation too, and everyone's heart posture within it. Because if you're going at something with, I'm just going to be right, of course you're going to tune out everything somebody has to say. Or if you're used to one way being normal and you haven't really gone deep and soul searching and questioning, wait, just because I've grown up with this, or this is a pattern or habit, insert whatever, said nature, does that make it right? Does that make it morally justifiable, etc.? So I think it really depends on both people, because you can have one person who's coming at it one way and they're wanting to point out truth in something, and somebody else who is not only resistant to it, but they're defensive and they don't have ears to hear, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think it's both ways.
I like
it's truth and grace in one.
Yeah, but you said heart posture.
Yeah.
So it is something that where you need to speak to someone about something. It's not a pulling aside. It's not even that. It just somehow you veer into the conversation and on the topic, and it's like, okay, I don't agree with what that person says. You know, is this the time or place to bring it up? You know, you have to weigh all these things and why.
Yeah.
But even then, even when you got it wrong, it seems to me in the end, in a conversation, if you really, really want to have a conversation, even with a complete stranger, it seems to me that your character should kick in. And there's something in it where, you know, if you feel yourself getting huffy, which, you know, sometimes we do, you know, we can feel it rise up in our throats and our throats get tight. But if that's doing that, then that's something in us, not necessarily that person. We shouldn't lash out at them.
Well, I think it is like, is that balance of figuring out, like you said, first, is it a hard issue with yourself or with them? And I think if something continues to be a pattern with that person, or it's something you truly can't shake off your chest, because what I try to do is like pray about it first and think, okay, is this just a hang up that annoys me? Is this hurting somebody else? Is it hurting me? Is it something that's becoming really like poisonous, like poison spreading in someone's vein that if I don't say something now or have a time I'm going to, that it's going to continue spreading like wildfire? Or is it just something that annoys me? For example, like, I think it's easy to look at people's behavioral patterns, like somebody who talks a lot or someone who's really loud or someone who knows everything about everything and want to just let them have it because they annoy you. But it's okay. Is that a character? Is that harming you in some sort of way? Or if it's something like you notice within your friendship with somebody or, family relationship, marriage, whatever. I think that is when it is not only important to bring something up, but I think you're doing yourself and the other person a disservice if you don't.
Yes.
But it's the realization of not being in control of their reaction.
Yes.
Because the reaction part is, I think, at least for me, what I dread the most. Because I almost go about things as though someone's emotions can get inside of me.
Yeah.
And I know that they can't. But I'm also
affected by them.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I hate conflict. I will stand up for myself and other people, Yeah. But in that same breath, I equally hate, like, people's annoyance or anger or, like, wondering what someone's going to say to me,
Right. Well, yeah, but if you bring it up, you expect something to come back.
Yeah.
But that is the deal. We don't have responsibility for the way they come at us. We only have the responsibility on how we speak to them. So how do we go about this? Because if you don't have responsibility for how they react.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
What do you do? Do you find it typically? I find it usually escalates. Now there's been on occasion things just go, woof, south real fast.
In conversation?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Dealing with conflict specifically.
Yes. And conflict or disagreement or misunderstanding.
Yeah, exactly.
But at that point, sometimes it spins off like, some Star Trek,
right?
18th, or X-Men. How many X-Men's are they? And it starts off, goes out in the world like that, and it just, you're like, how did I get here? How did we get here so quickly?
And then you have to deal with if people start to turn something that you have experienced or been hurt by, and they turn it back onto you. And not everyone does that, but that's where I think points in conversation those are the parts that I fear the most because I've dealt with that. In relationships, during breakups. Yeah. And it's funny, actually, they were having this conversation because I came across this blog post I wrote in 2019 where I left my job in Los Angeles on the spot. And I did have a very confronting conversation because I remember it was almost 2 years that I had worked at this place, and I love my clientele. It's not that I just disliked my higher ups and supervisors, but one was emotionally abusive, and I don't say that lightly, to multiple employees. And there was a lot that had happened, like behind the scenes with one was a man, one was a woman. And I remember I would take it and take it and take it. And eventually I felt like I was an emotional punching bag. Ooh. And I started thinking, I really do need the money here. But
is that why you took it?
Costing? Yeah. Because to move to LA, I didn't strike rich or anything, but it paid well. I was able to survive. I was able to keep myself afloat.
And it's expensive.
Oh, it's so expensive. Stupid expensive. But I remember thinking, is it worth it for my sanity? Because it wasn't just things. Because there were a lot that I built, I think, some resilience to, as far as, okay, I can kind of have, my spiritual force field on the outside. And things that I could look past. But when it got to certain points, the last words from actually this person were, Anna, you make me want to shoot you. And that was when I knew they wouldn't actually do that, but they would get so angry. And so they would sort of, I don't know how to describe their behavior. They were very paranoid, very angry, a lot going on in their personal life behind the scenes, but they would take that into the workplace, if that makes sense. And they would like spew it onto everybody else. Right. And I was like super empathic. So I was their friend one minute. They were asking me, you know, almost like their therapy pet. And then the next, I mean, really degrading things, they would say things that weren't just, oh, that hurts my feelings, but that were damaging to my character. There was a lot that happened, but I remember that was the day, like I thought in my head, okay, how do I bring this up? Because I need to stand up for myself. I can't, you know, being a doormat is just as terrible as sugarcoating something or not saying anything at all. Or being way too aggressive, like allowing things to just happen and enabling someone else's behavior is literally saying, okay, you can step on me, you can spit on me. It's like saying, here, hit me. And and so I remember like my hands were so shaky. And I remember thinking that like, this is the day I'm going to do it. And I was Googling a Henry Cloud article to verify my experiences.
Let's make sure.
Am I crazy?
Yeah,
like,
but that's good though.
Yeah.
I mean, you were checking wise counsel and.
Yeah. And I remember like it was yesterday because I've never even just quit a job because it's been so bad. And even when I left a previous job in the past, I mean, it was on good terms because I was moving. I'd given like a 2-month notice, never on the spot though. But this was to levels where I thought I can take absolutely no more. And I don't deserve to be treated this way, not in the slightest. And
it probably, if I remember correctly, during that time, you hated to work. It made your work life.
I was so tired. Yeah. It was the long drives. Again, my clients were amazing. Love my clients. Absolutely hated the commute. Like you're exhausted by the time you get there because you're driving. You go home, you're exhausted. You have to brace yourself to walk in there because you don't know what mood the supervisor's going to be in. And that'll depend on their personal life. But I remember I walked up to the front and I spoke a lot of truth. Very, it wasn't like, you know, this meltdown yelling match or anything, but I basically called out their toxic behaviors and I told them that I wouldn't be treated that way. And I said, so I'm leaving. And I had clients on my book that day. And people, the walls were really, really like not well insulated so you could hear. And I remember they were, shh, stop, like talk lower. And I just shook my head no and I kept talking and I left. And not that every person's conversation is going to go in that direction, but I think there's this fear in people.
Do you think you handled that well?
Yeah, I do. Because if it were any other situation that hadn't progressed as this one did, I would never just leave on the spot or say that. But I've realized in a lot of situations, if you're too soft, as in if you beat around the bush, you don't get it right through. Because the truth is, the truth hurts. And again, if you're shredding someone and their character and you're name shaming them, you know, you're shaming them, you're labeling them as things versus their actions, which I think is so important. Like like saying someone is a bad person versus labeling their actions as, you know, I think there's power in words, but
well, I mean, and this person said, you make me want
to shoot you.
No one can do that.
No,
I mean,
I don't regret anything. And again, I think every situation's different, but I was very sharp and I don't regret anything. So I told them I would pray for them.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I did. They walked down the hall because they were so angry. They were getting so angry with me because I just told them, like, it was like I had this film strip in my mind really from day one of how I've been treated and the other people who have been there, some who would quit because of the higher up as well. And I remember just saying it like it was. And then I said, you know, I will pray for you, but I'm not going to work in this environment.
Right.
And I remember writing on my phone, and that's what I found today. I wrote, like, someone else's anger cannot get inside of me. Someone doesn't have control over me.
Right.
I am not an emotional punching bag. Because I was in the break room, like, thinking, I'm like, am I really going to do this? I don't do that. I'm not, I'm impulsive, but I'm not that kind of impulsive.
Especially in
and
California,
I did it.
when you don't have a...
Oh, yeah.
Like,
no
it's
fallback. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think you learned about the communication there? There is a time and a place, it sounds like, that you have to be firm.
Yeah.
And you have to be blunt, as your friend in Europe pointed out.
Yeah.
How about those times when, let's say it's family?
Where it's a different kind of relationship.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so I, myself, I was speaking about that one where I literally hold this person's hand and say, why can't we just, talk this through and just be normal people?
Yeah. Was it like explosive, like yelling?
No, it wasn't
crying.
That. It was
gaslighting.
It was gaslighting, which I didn't know what gaslighting was. We used to call it pouting, sulking for days.
The movie is great on that too, by the way.
And that was
for context. 1930s.
Yeah, 1930s. That word is a historic word.
It is.
So but there was that going on. And there are different ways that people handle it.
Yeah.
Silence is another way.
Oh, the silent treatment.
But the silence, like, no, I will not talk about this.
Yeah.
And then
pretending everything's fine when it's clearly not.
Yeah. And the problem is you're trying to express something that needs to be expressed. And this is after carefully weighing, like, does this, it does, and we've talked about this before, it does say in Proverbs, it's to your glory to overlook an offense.
Right.
I don't think we have to go around and with the person that we love, and I'm talking whether it's a spouse or a friend or a sister or brother or a child, and point out otherwise that's all we're doing is pointing out
everything that's wrong, and they're not getting anything else reciprocated with that.
Yeah. And not only that, you think about all the pointing out we do in ourselves that's wrong with us. So that's all we're doing today. That's not really, I don't think, glorifying the Lord. So if it's our glory to overlook offense, but these are really necessary situations that you have to weigh.
Yeah.
Is this to my glory to overlook it, or is this something I can't overlook anymore?
Yep.
And I think at this point, what do you do when someone says, I'm not going to talk about that? You totally get shut down.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about that.
They say, I won't talk about it, or was it just they quit talking?
No, it's like, we're not talking.
Yeah.
We're not speaking about this. Well, what do you do when there's a roadblock like that? I know what we do. We pray about it, and we pray and we pray. And so the deal is we have to make a decision. Are we going to live this way? Are we going to say something even though they tell us we don't want to talk about it?
That's exactly it. It's like, do you give someone the art of free will? Yeah. And either on your terms, well, we have to talk about this, otherwise that impacts the relationship so much that it's either fake or resentment. Right. Which I think fake can equal resentment.
Yeah. Well, resentment explodes into sheer ugliness.
When it's just stuffing everything down too. It's like having all these problems and you stuff and you stuff and you stuff, and at some point it's going to vomit out.
Yes,
in really worse ways than if you just. Yeah. I think it also shows a reflection on the person, though, how they react, including silence. Yeah,
but what do you do in that case? You can't. We don't have responsibility over someone.
What would
Dr. Henry Cloud say? Shout out.
I don't want to try and guess, Doctor. Let me ask Siri really quick.
Yeah, we can.
I could binge read his blog. Yeah. Oh my gosh, and his books.
He's all over the place. It
is really touchy because it depends on how important the relationship is to you. But again, it goes both ways, because for me personally, if I, in any relationship, friendship, family, sometimes there are seasons of, I think, maybe silence between you. If it's something that's going to impact it enough and they refuse to talk about it, give them the art of free will. And if they ever want to talk about it, great, you can mend it. Right. But until then, because I'm not a believer in just severing things right off the bat, unless it's really harmful and it's to such extents that, but when there are things, so many things have layers to it too. And I think that if there is something that's bothering you enough or that's impacted or hurt you, that someone's going to stuff it down, pretend it doesn't exist, how is it even a real relationship anyway? And I think that's where maybe you have to ask yourself, even like, can I handle being around them? Knowing what you know, or do you give them what I call the art of free will? And if they choose to walk away, like giving the choice, you know? But it's really touchy, especially when it's really people really close to you.
But I like that, the art of free will, because there's a place where you, I think, with a loved one, that you respect them enough to say, okay, they don't want to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give them the space. But then there's a point where you're like, okay, you begin to see anger issues, you begin to see other issues pop up, and it becomes concerning to you.
Yep.
You know, and you need, I'm not supposed to say that. I will say, there's a point where I feel like I need to speak about it.
Yeah.
You know, and particularly if it hurts others. But even if it's hurting me, I should be able to say something
Absolutely.
at that point. And I think maybe at the heart of it, too, is there's an element of respect in the relationship. And Stephen James, he's this wonderful, he writes a lot of thrillers, but he wrote a great prayer book called Praying for the Gut, Praying from the Guts. And it's really for teenagers. So parents go out and buy this book for your teenagers. But I used it when the tree fell on the house. And I didn't know it. I got it in the mail. I think I've told you the story. But I used it even though it was directed to teenagers because it got me through. But he talks about his status. And he when he's talking about writing, he said there's a status, like a character has status in a situation. And this is how they gain status, you know. And so I think about this. And I guess it could be negative and positive. So this is negative status. When someone shuts you off, they have a certain power over you.
Yeah. Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
And then
form of control.
Or that's not true because we just said their emotions can affect us.
But I'm saying it's their for right. But it still can be their version to try and control you. I do think.
Or deep down inside, they just generally don't want to talk about it. They don't want to. They don't want to go conversation. Well, they don't want to go in the messy emotional details that are bleeding over into your life. And I think that's where the when I say respect, there's a point where you have to. I do think there's a point in conversation where we all have to say, I'm sorry, I want to talk about this to you with you, but right now you're disrespecting me. And if, please don't speak to me that way. Or we have to, sever this conversation for another time. I think that's really important.
When I get to if someone doesn't want to talk about something, but they're willing to come back to it, because I understand too in certain conversations that I've been in these where it gets so heated that both parties are not. It's like if you say another word, it's not going to be something good.
Yes.
And I think there is power in
stopping.
Walking away from it and coming back to it, because it gives you time to clear your head, to pray about it, to even figure out from someone else how you might go about it, to restore it.
I think they say count to 10.
And sometimes if count to 24
and if
hours.
It doesn't work. 24 count to 24 hours. I love that. Okay. Yeah. Say, we need to table this. Yeah. I know I've said that I've said that to other people before, like, this has gone to a place we don't want to talk about anymore. And I've had this said to me, this has gone somewhere I don't want to go anymore. Let's stop talking about this now.
Right.
And that's, it's spoken to me in a very kind way. And I've had it spoken to me in a very harsh way. Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm a snowflake, and I'm not advocating that. But I think I watched Austen Land. You know how much I love Austen Land. And the romancing, what happened during Jane Austen's, they're in the 20th century. It was the 20th century at that time when they made the movie. No, it was the 21st century. No. Yes. No. I can't remember. But
That's like an entire clip.
I just had a moment.
Can we just zoom in for that? Yes, no, yes.
I just had a total thing. But so we have contemporary characters romancing what happened during Jane Austen's Jane Austen's John, say your name for me.
Jane Austen.
Been a long week, so
Their brains are fried.
Yeah. But they're sitting there. They're saying civility, the manners, the men, the women. But I love that. But at the same time, we look back historically. Well, that's good for them to say that, but we also know certain women were sold off to the highest bidder,
right?
For, in the aristocracy, and say that word for me. But then other women, had to do what they had to do to feed their children, and so, or men had to do what the patriarch said. So, I mean, there's problems with that, but still, there's something about civility,
right?
And even social manners.
Yes.
And I don't want to go Emily Post here, but there is something about civility and social manners that is still very, very important. And we are really lacking it.
People can be like douchebags about stuff, though. I'm a millennial, so I can say that, right?
I mean, I don't know about you. I'm awestruck by the beauty of having a conversation with a complete stranger and delighting in whatever. Like, I was at a restaurant today celebrating a loved one's birthday, and I walked by, and there's this little baby, this beautiful little baby, and I just walk up and I start just talking to this little fella. He was just gorgeous. And tell him how handsome he was. And he was just, and, I looked over at mom and dad, and they're glowing, and they're complete strangers. And there was nothing, this was me being straight up grandmother, and just delighting. And they were delighted that I was delighting in the beauty of their child. There's something so freeing about just doing and allowing. And I mean, I understand some people like their privacy, but your baby's out in a carriage and is beside the table. It's
like in the public eye.
Yeah, it's a public.
If you're really offended by someone talking to it, maybe
I mean, if you're putting yourself out
don't
there, don't go out.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you put yourself on Instagram, don't do that.
Right.
Because
100%.
your loud conversation has become that. But there's something delightful about having just a conversation with a complete stranger that is totally and completely delightful, and where you honor each other and respect each other.
Right. Right. Where you don't. Yeah. And you wish that. If it could be that way with strangers, you think, especially within people in your own circle.
Yes,
but I think sometimes people, you can feel kind of thrown under the bus. And even my own actions too. Like, I notice with people, like in certain relationships, family versus friends versus acquaintances versus clients, et cetera, et cetera. So these different levels of interaction, but it can be a slippery slope with, I don't even just say confrontation, but just honest discussion and conversation, because it can be easy to almost treat people as though they don't matter as much because you have a closeness, so they should just automatically assume things. And I think that's the thing is, in these conversations, it is a huge lack of respect all the time for the other person. And I think that things could be amicable. I think honestly all of it could be so simple. All of it's so overcomplicated. We get so into even the psychology of it. I'm sorry, but this is where the rant comes out more than it should, which is ironic that I'm talking about simplicity. But really, like, even these types of conversations we're so worried about offending people or how they're going to take it, how they're going to react. When if we already know our heart posture towards someone and something, I think even letting that be known before you go into the conversation, but then just saying it. But it's like, at least for me, I overthink things so much.
Yes.
So much.
I never do.
To where I feel like, again,
it's okay.
I wish I could be one of those people who just says it like it is. I know someone who absolutely embodies that but yet there's so much like love behind what they say.
Yeah. See, this is huge.
Yeah.
I think
where you know where they're coming from, you trust their character enough that because you want the best for them, I think that's what it comes down to. Because you love them and you actually do want the best for them and you see them, you're pointing this out. Yeah. Or you're having this conversation, not just pointing things out.
You're also admitting, you're saying, I mean, we all agree, in the conversation, you're admitting that you can easily be misreading things.
You know, I think it is important to be introspective enough with that to be able to admit that.
Yeah. How do you take it when someone... See, in my family, when I say, this is no joke, my kids will tell you, I'll say, can I speak to you privately, please? And they're all like, what did I do wrong? And I'm like, that's not always the case, little Miss Flip Flop, is it? Is it, Lily Joy? It's not always the case. A lot of times,
I want to sit here and say that.
I want to call somebody out and for doing good. I think maybe we were missing that part of this. But how do you handle it when someone pulls you aside and tells you what happens when they are like, they're flooding and they're passionate and they're in their moment and they're telling you something and it's no, I mean,
and they're like, holy crap, I should quote myself on this. That sounded good.
You're like, whoa. And you're like, part of you is like, you're up against the wall and you're deer in the headlights and you're like, okay, I normally try to pause and go, okay, what is this, you know, as it's right, just, you know, everything's up, moving up and fear. I think a lot of it is fear. They're not going to love me anymore. They hate me. Why did it escalate this quickly? There's all that. And then, but at the same time, I'm trying to pause and say, okay, what exactly are they trying to say to me?
Right.
And is this a blind spot of mine?
Yeah. And I think it depends on how the person says it. Not just says something. I mean, again, if they're coming towards your actions versus labeling you and resorting to cynicism, name call, verbally attacking, sarcasm, which are completely will kill it. Like if you want to shut someone down, use sarcasm, cynicism, you know, and only point out every single flaw you've ever seen and things that just annoy you, everything that which steers from how you've been affected from it. But it really does depend because I had a friend a couple years ago who I had done something that had bothered her. We had been trying to figure out, she lived in a different state, like across the country, and we were trying to figure out time to FaceTime. And we kept planning days, and then I kept forgetting that I would have stuff and it would overlap, and I genuinely was forgetting. And for me, I thought, it's just casual, it's fine, we'll reschedule. Unbeknownst that, you know, she had been like structuring her day so that she could do this. So I wasn't even thinking on my part, maybe she has given up time she could use with other people or her family, whoever, and is actually carving out this time. Because for me, it was, it's cool. It'll fit in somehow. We can reschedule. It's just a FaceTime call. And, you know, I knew like this friend was important to me, but clearly my actions weren't telling her or reciprocating, you're important. It's like, well, my time is more valuable than yours. And I remember she did talk to me about it, but it was in the kindest way. I mean, she could have gone about it two very different ways, and she could have sat there and shamed me, and she could have said anything she wanted, really. But she was just open and honest and communicated to me and basically said, you know, she said, I'm starting to almost expect that you're not gonna FaceTime. She said, so I just appreciate like if you stick to your word a little more, which I was like, ouch. I should kind of, it was the initial shock because I mean, who likes being called out on something? It's not ever comfortable, but she was completely right. And
what did you say to her? Did it take you a while? Sometimes it takes you a while to understand that they're right. Sometimes you just take it.
With this, honestly, because it was like, I knew how many times, and that same day I said, I'm so sorry. And it'll be legitimate things like working, but things that I wasn't checking ahead enough to show her, hey, you're important to me, and sticking to my word. And honestly, like I was more so, I felt this sense of embarrassment, number one, but also it was this initial like sucker punch in the gut because it is like a hit to the ego.
Right.
I don't like being wrong about things. I hate it sometimes.
Right.
I mean, I know I'm wrong about a lot of things and have been, but because she handled it in a way that was honestly just very, she was candid, but she was kind. And honestly, I replied to her immediately. And I told her, I said, I was like, you're totally right. Yeah. And I told her that, I didn't realize it had been affecting her in that way. And I did apologize for it. I said, I will definitely be better about that. And it was fine. It wasn't this falling out because also people could take things like that. Or I could have easily said, well, I've had work, which rationalizing things that are affecting her. Because it's easy when well, I've had this, I've had that. Which is a lot like romantic relationships too.
But there's something I want to mention on this point. Because this happened, I think this grew your mother and me closer years ago.
Oh no!
I'm not going to mention that part. But like she waited for weeks. She waited like 3 weeks to pull me aside on something. And this is when you were young, and so I mean, it was years ago. I mean, not that you're old. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm almost 30
actually, it was
in 3
at
years.
least 15 years ago. But she pulled me and she goes, I really waited on this, and your mother is so sweet and thoughtful. But she waited and she waited, and then finally she goes, I just really need to confront you on that. Not confront you. I just need to say you should not have. I didn't appreciate, when you da 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 da. And I looked at her and I'm going, I had no idea. I apologize greatly. I ask your forgiveness. Like I seriously had no idea. But after she said it, I realized, okay, this was an infringement. And I realized it not only increased our friendship, it moved it forward, which is like, that's wonderful. It moved it forward because the way she handled it, she taught me by doing that how to handle, not that I always get it right. But how to handle conflict. And what, how your mother is like the most patient person in the world. Like she'll wait, she'll I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to pray about it. And I'm like, I want to do it now, but she taught me so much. I learned so much. But it increased our friendship. It taught me just a lot about respect and kindness and goodness, all these fruits of the Spirit that came out in her, and how to correctly say something. But she was fearless in it, in the sense of, I need to speak this. I'm going to speak this in love. How you react is really on you. Right. And she never said that. She never said that. Because she didn't have to. I totally fessed up, Right. But and more than that, it like I said, it grew me in wisdom, and being a friend, and what balance. It was the beginning of your mother teaching me, which your mother is very good at, and I have a daughter who's very good at this. Teaching me boundaries. Yeah. Yes. Which I was, boundaryless. And so I was like, there's something really neat about that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned my mom, because I literally was thinking of one of your daughters who honestly, it's not even confrontation, but she's just honest in her requests. But totally her wonderful, glorious steam shower. Like, she prefers not to have people's leftover washcloths in there or any, the mat's a certain way. And I totally I get that. And there was once I used it and I wrung out my washcloth, left it. And it was hilarious. I mean, it was she was so kind about it too. And this wasn't even there's some falling out we're having. But she just said, could you please just come get your washcloth? I really don't like having people's leftover stuff. And I started to laugh. I was like, yes, I'm so sorry. But honestly, it's we even tiptoe and sugarcoat and beat around the bush for basic human needs.
But it grew your relationship. Yeah. And it also grows you into how to do life with other people.
Exactly. And that's how often do we not even communicate our most basic human needs? Honesty and like you're on a road trip. Where should we go eat? Oh, it doesn't matter. When you're actually craving Taco Bell, but your friend wants Panera, or like, I mean, I learned this traveling, okay, and the European hop in June, because I was with several very, very different people, but I realized really quickly, if I don't communicate my budget, my sleep schedule, like not sleep schedule.
Even your energy.
My energy, no.
Like I am tired.
We're just being societally polite, which is bullcrap. But I even had a fantastic conversation with a friend of mine in Paris because, like, there was a really bright light or something, and it's really hard for me to fall asleep when it's like super bright light or like somewhere it's really loud. I can sleep like a rock otherwise, but I think it was something. And again, it's not like this was some conversation where we had some falling out in this thing, but I just asked if the light and maybe the door could be closed since I was like sleeping in the living room in the open in our like small little Airbnb. And she was totally cool about it. And it's like, or even communicating like when you are hitting a major crash and really need food when you're on your way to an art museum or something. It's basic stuff like that. That's honesty. And again, and how you go about it. Some people can be really aggressive and demanding, but if you just communicate that in a way that is, I think it doesn't have to be so like dramatic.
I know.
All the
I
time.
think we
It's
have
just
to
you
make
can be
it
honest
something
and
bigger.
kind and one. But I think that even in confrontation and heavy conversations that are like arguments, and even in just communicating basic human needs, like, are so tiptoed around. And I think we could make it so simplistic by literally just being honest, but we're so afraid, or I am so afraid of people's reactions. But it's really only been in the last, honestly, year, I would say, even communicating just like my basic human needs to people, and not in a way of, I need it this way and that, but
well, I mean, that's really
making
something
requests.
you have to, but particularly when you live with people, and most of us live with people somehow.
Yep. Exactly.
I mean, and I count work as that because you're there for a very long time.
Yes.
So, I mean, just simply saying, would you please, and then this is not a pet peeve of mine, will you please, I'm just bringing something up.
Yeah.
Take the K-cup out of you can see where you would particularly want somebody to do that work. Somebody you didn't know, you would like them to take their K-cup out or something. Just, or, when the trash is full, bag it up. I mean, little things like that.
Exactly.
And I mean, these are not my pet peeves. I can't even remember what my pet peeve is. I guess messing with the Joe Rogans. But, I think there's something, I don't understand why we can't do that and why we're not more. Why did the Europeans end up so honest in that regard?
I don't
know.
We're not.
But I do think there is a point where, like, I have one daughter, that the same one, who can deliver truth, and it can feel like a sledgehammer at times.
Right.
And I have to say, be a little more gentle about this.
Right.
There's a right and a wrong way. But who's to say what the right and wrong way is?
Right. Subjective opinion too.
Well, it is, but then you see the way Christ talked to people, and I mean, he was harsh where he needed to be harsh, and
that is really true.
But he was also very gentle where he needed to be gentle. And
you do look at us the kinds of people he was talking to as well. It wasn't all just, so I think it also depends on the person, the relationship. If you've made your request before. Because I noticed in some conversations too, if you are too soft, the point doesn't get across. But it doesn't mean you slam them as a person and you yell. Like, some people think, the louder I get, the more they're going to understand it. Or the more sarcastic I am, the more they're going to get it. Again, if you want to kill something off in about a nanosecond, resort to these 5 simple steps. Yes.
Yeah.
And speculation, speculating things instead of just letting things
Right.
But maybe having boundaries before conversations too. I did have a conversation once where I instilled some rules in that, like, no, breakdown / yelling was allowed.
Yeah.
I had some specific things to where I said ahead of time, actually, the conversation will end. And once with actually a former Los Angelino roommate, a kind of scary couple I lived with.
Because
I said, if there's yelling, I'm leaving the room.
Because you'd had that experience before.
Oh, and there was a conversation with my roommates, and it was a couple in Los Angeles years and years ago, which really wasn't that long, but it feels like it. And I was bringing up a question of maybe since there are 3 of us living here, we should split utilities 3 ways instead of in half, because it was a couple. And I remember I was super sick. I had the flu, and I remember like trying to drink some water and bring up this like discussion that I knew might blow up, and it did blow up very quickly. Like it was very dramatic and a lot of tears. Not for me. I was kind of sitting in shock, but at one point, both were yelling. Yeah. And I looked at them in my like croaky flu voice, and I said, if anyone's going to yell, I said, we're ending the conversation and I'm walking away. I said, like, you have to be like, I basically was like, this isn't allowed. I said, if we can't do this in a calm like manner, like we're not going to have it at all.
I think what we're trying to say is adulting. Yeah, I think we need to be adults about this. And I mean, not that there's not a time to raise your voice. I guess there are times. I mean, like if somebody is catch that kid, when he's falling into a pond, or stop that kid from getting in the road, Or,
okay, sorry, I was thinking base.
Yeah, like there's that. But I mean, even. I guess as adults, if we're not setting the standard here, because we've got lots of eyes on us. Yeah. And I'm sorry, some people said adults start at 26 and their brains don't develop in blah, 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 until 26. Well, I don't care. Everyone can be taught manners
absolutely.
Or, a way of speaking. And the problem is there's this pattern. And it will propagate in families that this is the way we speak. Now, when we as a family, when we get together at the table, we are laughing. There is sarcasm flying, but it's because we know each other, and we love each other, and we are laughing. That is our pattern. But another person's pattern could be yelling. Just. We get in the room and, they always talk about don't talk politics or religion. And
also lack of honesty.
Yeah. But I mean, even, I think we have this pattern in our society that where it doesn't matter, I'm thinking it doesn't matter how much you make. It doesn't matter how, what kind of status you have or anything. We're setting the stage for our children to be watching this. Right. And other people. Eyes are on us, the media, the social media influencers, however they talk to somebody else. It really, really matters here. And my hero is William Wilberforce.
Oh man, he's great.
Yeah, we have conversations a lot. Yeah.
He was great.
No, I'm joking. I was giving a hard time, but he really did. He wrote a book on society and manners, and what he meant is the return of civility. And I find that I never read it, so I can't say that part about it, but I found it interesting. I mean, he was very much into, protecting animals. So, because he understood this is God's world, there's a part of us that should protect and keep, and take dominion of the right way, and serve. And by yelling, that's none of that. Right. By beating an animal senseless, that's not going to help.
Exactly.
It doesn't do that. By beating a person verbally, it's not going to help.
And that's so, And it's like we go about things like, I want to make him get the point. And we think the more I repeat it and say it louder, the more aggressive, then they'll get it. Right. And it's like, really, that's shutting someone else down. It's not giving them the room to even like chew on some stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I don't know the answer to this. I don't know how you reform civility. And I know that's a word that's tossed around in the news and has been, and it's called on by both parties, and and then you'll see the same parties yelling, it's whatever, or calling,
it's a dirty playing
field. naming, just calling names. I really think it needs to come from we the people,
right?
Or
I think it's just us too.
That's what I meant. Yeah. We the Christians,
exactly.
And we model it. We started in our families. I think it's also important for our families to see us majorly disagree with somebody. Yeah. And I think we own up when we do that. We own up to our mistakes and apologize.
Yeah. Yeah. Like reconciliation.
Well, even it may not have, the problem may not be solved.
Right.
But the attitude and the posture that we took was wrong.
Right. And letting them know you still love them as a person too. Right. Or even if you don't agree with someone's opinion, or because when it's election time, how divisive it gets over everybody, like, oh, you're unfriended, unfollowed,
Yeah. But I didn't even understand that culture.
I think that's my crazy era.
Yeah.
But it goes the same way with, I think, in-person conversations too, and with really close relationships, and especially among believers, because you would think if we actually are practicing what we preach, but we're beating people over the head with stuff and just attacking the person just to get a point across, and it's completely hypocritical. I mean, obviously we all fall short, but I think a lot of people even have an intense conversation and think, oh gosh, this means we have to just sever stuff. I mean, maybe sometimes, depending on if there are a lot of layers there where you're like, you know what, for a while, you do need to take space to heal, because I don't think you always have to interact with people if you know it's unhealthy for you both. I think if that's kind of made known and not just, I'm going to silent treatment. I don't think silent treatment is, I consider that emotional abuse as well. But taking space for things to heal, for people to work their stuff out. I mean, was it working out your salvation?
Well, I think it's also communicating. Like, I'm taking a pause on this.
Yep.
Yeah, there's something about it. I can't. It's kind of nebulous, like the fuzz in your eye.
Yeah, it's still there. It's like the corner. I'm just gonna dig, and like a string will come out.
But it's like great. We haven't found the heart and soul of this, except for the only place is the heart posture.
And I think just doing our part, and I'm speaking for myself individually, or ours, and literally the two of us, I'll speak just on my own behalf, but knowing what you need to do, like you generally speaking, but knowing what you need to do.
What is that?
It would depend on the situation and person, but if it's to go and talk to them and do it, like doing your part and letting them be in control of their reaction, and knowing their reaction is a reflection on them. It's not you. But also something interesting. I have a friend, well, it's funny, they're now married, but when they were dating or looking at dating, they had these intense, absolutely intense debates. And my friend, her now husband, I don't want to say she hated him, but very close. But they actually would have someone almost be a mediator of sorts, to like sit in there in the room with them, her roommate, because she was so well balanced that she could understand the different sides they were coming from. It wasn't, she was only partial to my friend, but also to her, now husband. But then, so even I think.
What did that do?
It helped to mediate and have an objective viewpoint, because I think some things can get so intense. I think it's biblical sometimes too, where if you have tried to deal with someone one-on-one.
Right. Yes, it is.
And Matthew it gets 18. Too intense and you both, and it escalates. But having someone else who is seeing where you're both coming from, it's like an, eyewitness testimony. But also someone who just can be objective without taking one side or another, and can see it as like facts versus only going off of emotion, can be helpful too. So I think that, not everyone has that as an option, but I think if there is someone trusted and who can see something very objectively.
You know what I just thought?
Speak it. Spill the
I will
tea.
speak. I'm spilling
Spill
tea,
it, baby.
I'm in my Texas tea cup from my dear friend Marianne, Alicia. Is I think conversation has broken down. Now, this is a generality, but conversation has broken down with social media because we have that firewall in social media, and I'm not talking about the censorship because you know how I feel about that, but
we have that Musk suddenly appears
in the middle. Yay. If he stays true. But it's that firewall of, I can bash, you know, and on Twitter, hashtag, hashtag whatever your blank crisis is. But that's just it. We have brought our media minds into one-on-one activities.
Yep.
So that when we are meeting with somebody one-on-one, that firewall is gone, but we forgot. And so we launch at them as if it's a rant.
Yep.
And, you know, as if we're a talk show host on some weird women's group that meets every so often on TV and is one-sided. You know, that wasn't sarcasm or a jab at all. That wasn't meant to be that.
But you didn't name, shame, or call out names. Not like for publication
purposes. I was
purposes.
just a total whip.
You have absolutely zero clue who you're talking. You could possibly be talking about.
But no. What I'm saying is we have, and well, even then, when you're on something like that, I mean, even to some extent, even doing podcasting.
Yeah.
You know, you and I are talking to each other, but we may be other people, and they may be screaming in their cars right now.
They'd be like crying, binge eating Doritos and
really, I hope it's hippie chips because those are my favorites.
We actually have a list of names we want to read off really quickly.
That's true. Wait for that. But get the Bohemian barbecue hippos because those are the best hippies.
Oh, hippie chips.
Yeah. But I think the problem is we have been trained to do it in bites, you know, in X amount of words with hashtags on it. And for the most effect. And we always feel that sense of wall between us. Like, and the only way we're going to do it is if we yell at each other.
Right.
And, or we're so honest, it's brutal. Like we're looking, I do think social media has made us to the point where we want to be a soundbite. We want to be right.
Right. We want to be right. It's true though. And I think that's where it
growing
comes
each
back.
other in relationship.
Exactly.
You know, it's like crazy.
Well, and that's where it comes back to, well, you know, the fuzz in your own and thy own eye. And mine's honestly being introspective. And I think
mine's
maybe
a telephone pole.
A telephone pole?
Why look at the fuzz in someone else's eye when you have a telephone pole in yours?
Dang, that's good. That's very 21st century too.
It's not a telephone pole. I guess it's an electric line pole.
A 5G tower in your own eye.
a star.
Well, that was good. I'm gonna write down my jokes. Oh, I'm gonna quit my
satellite.
A satellite. A drone.
Oh my goodness. Keep going. We can get to the end of technology. Yeah.
It depends on where your heart posture is. I hate that word. It's so overused and I keep overusing it. But it is true. It's where you're coming from on things. And I think being able to be honest with yourself enough too, and to even confess and own up if you've done something.
So what are some points? Let's take them from Laura. What are some points, and Matthew 18, what are some points we should do?
Slow to speak, slow to anger.
Yeah, there you go. Slow to speak, slow to anger. Yeah. What are the
But that doesn't mean being too soft either. People think you have to be a pansy and so like
it does.
Talking
a doormat.
Yes.
I lived for a doormat for years. It's not healthy either.
I'm sorry. I'm like,
well, no. I allowed that, and that was on me. That's on me. And not only that, you prevent somebody's growth. Yeah. Here's something I want to talk about.
You're still at the breast.
If you're in relationship somehow and you don't bring things up because you're fearful. I mean, there are times that people need to be fearful because if they're in physical, abuse things, you do separate. You get out of the way. Or you're afraid of the emotional blowout. You're afraid of the sulking, the pouting, whatever it is.
The loser mentality.
Yeah, well, whatever it is. And the thing is, though, that relationship, by you not speaking the truth, but then sometimes you speak the truth in love and it's not received over and over and over again so much that you shut up. And I'm just talking, that's personal experience, but also I know this is a history for other people. And I'm not playing martyr role or pity party or anything like that. It was on me, But so what are the steps? What are some of the things we could do before we go into a conversation that we feel is not one of those things we need to overlook for the glory of God? And, it's to your glory to overlook offense. What should we do beforehand to prep for that conversation?
Well, pray, you reach out, you say, can we talk about, I mean, I don't think there is a formula for it. There is, I think it's literally examining yourself, though.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I think that's it, though.
Looking at the plank, the telephone, the satellite in your eye first. I think it does start at home.
And I think also, though, even if you're not like, oh, yes, there's this thing I have, being open to if someone else has an issue with you, or stuff to say, and coming to a place where you're open to receiving as well. And I mean, if they're gaslighting you and throwing stuff onto you, name shaming you, that's completely different. And that's not, again, that's on them and their reaction for, words they're plastering onto you or labeling you. But if it really is something that has eaten at them, and this is the time that I think you do have to be in a place where you're open to also hearing of your own shortcomings.
But what if it happens on the fly?
As in, you're not prepared for it?
Or it just comes out?
I mean, again, it depends on what they say, how they're saying it. It depends on the intensity of the conversation and how far it's escalated. Like, is everyone crying, tearing their robes?
Yeah, but you think about it in a way, there's something in it
so much.
We should be slow to speak, slow to anger, and we should. So that's on us.
I think listening to, because I think in our brain, a lot of the time we go at things with, okay, how can I prove my next point?
Right.
Like someone's talking and they could literally be completely rational in what they're saying. All the while you're formulating in your brain, how are you going to oppose them, your counter argument, as though you're like in court cross-examining someone just to get stuff out of them. Right. But actually listening, and this is also where my
I think this is
European friend, lover, not really lover, romantic partner at one point. It really did.
Oh, that was a long time ago. I thought you were just talking this summer.
Oh, no. That's just a waiter I drug into my picture. Actually, he volunteered as tribute.
I didn't see that.
But this was actually eye-opening to me because that's something I always struggled with. And I still can struggle with, is actually listening versus thinking, okay, I'm listening to what they're saying, and like, here's my next set of points. But when
we treat it like mock trial.
Yeah.
We're like taking notes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
not mock trial in place. Objection, Your Honor.
Really sustained.
I'm taking you to small. We can take. The answer is take them to small claims court. Just write that you're going to sue them or something.
Just write all their
fear of God at them, and you're good.
Restraining order. Always.
Yeah, restraining order. I looked at one of those once for a roommate. Also in Los Angeles. But
you have your storybook of LA stories.
Anything bad, just know it's probably Los Angeles.
But go back to the listening thing, because that's really huge. Yeah.
We started off as friends, and we both were very hot-headed and debating so many like hot topics. It was during 2020, and that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
But it was
cat on the hot tin roof.
Right. And
Stella,
we
you don't even
go
get that reference.
at it. No, I don't. I have no idea.
It's okay.
Wait, that was a movie.
Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando.
I thought Marilyn Monroe was in that movie.
Coffee today.
Or Elizabeth Taylor.
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
No, it was
Elizabeth Taylor.
No. What was her name? Beautiful.
Grace Kelly.
No. Well, these are all beautiful women.
Judy Garland.
No, the game.
I'm not that ignorant to the 20th century, but apparently I am.
Goodness. Oh, newsflash, we'll get it and we'll put it in the show notes. Yes.
Misty will be proud.
No, but the problem is I really, really love this actress and I cannot remember. But it's okay.
Okay.
The deal is, go ahead.
So we debated everything and it's almost like we agreed. We'd finally get around to it and realize, oh, maybe we're coming from the same point of view, but such different angles, such different cultural upbringings, such different like values in life, different things. But I remember I really did want to understand where he was coming from because he truly took an interest where he would get a legal pad. And again, he would shred my arguments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Was it yellow or white?
You'd have to ask him, but except we broke up and I have no contact.
It had a line, so you got an actual legal pad and took notes during your conversation.
He would take notes on documentaries I would send, articles I would send.
Was that for him because he wanted to pursue looking at these?
He did. And it was a genuine, he was honestly one of the first people who I had ever talked to, debated, and who was a friend who I could be as honest, even sometimes brutally honest. And he welcomed that and asked for that and said that my Americanized sugarcoating was annoying, which I'd never been used to.
Right.
And so,
particularly
again, we weren't going after each other's character you're a moron. Yeah. You're full of BS,
right. You're Fruit Loops.
I mean, he would attack my arguments, And there were some, but basically, especially when we ended up realizing, oh, we're romantically compatible, I really wanted to understand where he was coming from on stuff because I cherished that friendship. And then obviously, had sparks and ended up, relationally thinking of things. But it really did cause me to slow down in my thinking because I think the romantic thing had a lot to do with it because you'll do anything for love. And it wasn't that I was even agreeing with the outcome of what he was getting, but I would actually stop and I would research the same things he was sending to me.
And
I would still debate the heck out of him.
You were not on the same page with many things.
Nope. I mean, not a lot. There were some things that we would get and we're like, oh, okay, we're kind of on the same, we're on the same wavelength. But a lot that we were completely different upbringings and, social values and things. But again, I think that's with conversations, people don't actually listen. Right. And I mean, I can be just as guilty of that. Yes. And formulating again, all right, what's my counter to this? Or thinking of something that I want to say before they even talk. And I'm so ready to say it that I'm not listening to what they're saying. I'm waiting for my opportunity to So that's hard to narrow down. And just
I think there's something about being life-giving.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I would agree with that.
I never thought about that.
You can speak life or death.
There you go.
And words are powerful, too.
There you go. Let's sing the Toby Mac song on it.
Is that a Toby Mac song?
Yeah. Well, it's also scripture. But wow. I wonder where he got it.
Wait, did Jesus or Toby Mac sing this? Did Jesus rap?
That's interesting.
Rapped in parables.
Yeah, no, that would be Isaiah. He rapped. Jeremiah was a
J-Dog.
Yeah, he was a harsh rapper. He laid it on the line.
And then you have the psalmist who's tearing their robes and they're hopeful.
Yeah.
The mood swing rapper.
So the deal is the point behind these conversations is that we want to be life giving.
That's right. We do want to be life giving.
I like that.
We want to be salt and light.
Salt and light.
Even when we feel salty.
Well, there you go.